For 42 years, Arthur Pendelton was the man the town of Oakhaven looked right through. If you saw him at the feed store, he was just a pair of faded denim overalls, a sweat-stained John Deere cap, and a silence so heavy it felt like a physical wall. The locals called his 100-acre plot, the Dust Bowl, a stubborn, rocky piece of land wedged tightly between the sprawling, million-dollar estates of the county's elite developers. To the town council, he was a relic of a dying era, an eyesore delaying the inevitable march of progress. They laughed at his ancient tractor. They ignored his quiet nods at the town square. They treated him like a tenant on his own history. But human arrogance has a funny way of blinding people to the ground right beneath their feet. Nobody in Oakhaven ever stopped to ask why a man who seemingly made nothing from his land refused every multi-million-dollar buyout offer that landed on his chipped kitchen table. They thought he was just a stubborn, uneducated old fool. They were dead wrong. Because buried deep within the county's oldest vault, under a layer of dust that hadn't been disturbed since the 19th century, sat a leather-bound ledger. And inside that ledger was a single, hand-drawn map that was about to turn the entire valley upside down, rendering the town's most powerful billionaires entirely powerless overnight. The pressure on Arthur reached a boiling point during the blistering summer of last year. A massive development conglomerate, Vanguard Crest, had just finalized plans for a premier golf resort and luxury estate community. There was only one problem: Arthur's farm sat directly in the center of their blueprints. The CEO of Vanguard, a ruthless second-generation tycoon named Richard Sterling, wasn't used to hearing the word no. When Arthur quietly declined a $3 million offer, Sterling decided to play dirty. First came the subtle harassments. The county suddenly found dozens of bizarre zoning violations on Arthur's property. Then came the mysterious midnight cutting of his barbed wire fences, letting his few head of cattle wander onto the main highway. The local police, heavily funded by Sterling's corporate donations, were always too busy to investigate. Through it all, Arthur remained completely unflappable. He would simply patch his fences by the light of a kerosene lantern, tip his hat to the aggressive corporate lawyers who cornered him at the local diner, and return to his porch. The townspeople watched with a mix of pity and frustration. "Just take the money, Arthur," the diner owner, Martha, pleaded one morning as she poured his black coffee. "They'll find a way to take it anyway. You can't fight City Hall, and you definitely can't fight a billionaire." Arthur just took a slow sip, his weathered face showing no emotion. "The land remembers, Martha," he said softly, speaking more words in one breath than he had in the last 3 months. "People forget. But the land remembers." The breaking point arrived on a tense Tuesday morning at the county courthouse. Sterling had pulled his ultimate lever, eminent domain. The town council, bought and paid for by the promise of massive future tax revenues, had agreed to condemn Arthur's farm under the guise of blighted property clearing. The courtroom was packed to the gills with spectators, reporters, and Sterling's high-priced legal team, all wearing tailored suits that contrasted sharply with Arthur's lone, worn flannel shirt. Sterling sat at the front, a smug smile plastered across his face. The judge, an older man who seemed eager to wrap the proceedings up, banged his gavel. "Mr. Pendelton," the judge announced, looking down over his glasses, "the council has presented a compelling case that your property is a public hazard and holding back vital community infrastructure. Do you have legal representation or any documentation to present before this court finalizes the transfer of title?" Arthur stood up slowly, his joints popping in the quiet room. He didn't have a lawyer. He didn't even have a briefcase. Instead, he pulled a yellowed, oversized piece of parchment out of a canvas grocery bag. The document looked incredibly fragile, its edges frayed and darkened by time. Arthur walked past the barrier, his heavy work boots thudding against the hardwood floor, and placed the document directly onto the clerk's desk. "I don't need a lawyer, Your Honor," Arthur said, his voice ringing unexpectedly clear across the silent room. "I just need you to read the original foundational charter of this entire valley. The one signed by the state's first governor in 1874. Sterling laughed out loud from the front row, whispering to his lead attorney about senile old farmer tactics. But as the judge adjusted his reading glasses and unrolled the massive document, the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The judge's face drained of all color. He looked from the document to Arthur, then down at the paper again, his hands visibly shaking. The parchment wasn't a standard deed. It was a sovereign land grant, issued before Oakhaven even existed as a town. And it contained a highly specific, immutable clause that changed everything. The original governor hadn't just given the Pendelton family the land, he had granted them total, absolute sovereignty over the valley's primary water aquifer, which ran directly beneath Arthur's rocky soil. Furthermore, the document stated that any alteration to the surrounding landscape that threatened the natural flow of that water would immediately forfeit the land rights of all adjacent properties back to the Pendelton estate. Every single luxury mansion, every road, and the entire proposed golf course sat entirely within that forfeiture zone. He effectively held the legal kill switch to the entire town's modern infrastructure. The courtroom fell into a stunned, breathless silence as the true weight of the land record sank in. Sterling's face turned an ash-gray color, his confident posture collapsing in an instant. He scrambled toward his attorneys, whispering frantically, desperately looking for a loophole in the century-old document. But the law was absolute, and the paper in the judge's hand was ironclad. How could a quiet farmer keep a secret this massive for over 40 years while the world built empires right up to his property line? And more importantly, what was Arthur going to do next? Would he use this newfound leverage to completely dismantle the town of Oakhaven, reclaiming the land that was stolen from his ancestors, or would he negotiate a deal that would change the destiny of every single resident in the valley forever? The power balance had completely flipped, and a single word from the quiet farmer could now trigger the demolition of millions of dollars in luxury real estate. As the reporters began to whisper and the live feed started broadcasting the shocking news across the state, the townspeople held their breath. The man they had laughed at, mocked, and tried to run off his own land was now the absolute ruler of their future. This incredible story proves that you can never judge a person's worth by their outward appearance, nor should you ever underestimate the quietest person in the room. What would you have done if you were in Arthur's shoes? Would you have kept the secret for decades, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back, or would you have sold the land long ago? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. We read every single one, and we want to know if you think Arthur's patience was a stroke of absolute genius or a massive gamble. If this story of quiet justice and unexpected triumph brought a smile to your face today, make sure to hit that like button right now. It helps our channel grow and allows us to keep bringing you these incredible, untold stories of ordinary people who did extraordinary things. If you want to discover more mind-blowing stories where the underdog wins against all odds, make sure you are subscribed to our channel. Don't forget to click that notification bell so you never miss a single episode of real-life mysteries, historic showdowns, and inspiring justice. Share this video with a friend who needs a reminder that justice always finds a way, and we will see you in the very next story.